Hey everyone, I'm Greg,
I'm Matt.
and we just thought we'd try something different as far as an update. Probably a good place to start is introducing the two of us. So I'll start out here. I'm Greg, one of the co-founders of Free to Fly. I'm a pilot with a major airline, currently unemployed given everything that's happened over the past several weeks. Um, Came out of a background previously with the military and living in Ontario at this point and looking for work along with so many of our other aviation professionals. I've got six kids. Three of them are out on Vancouver Island, of similar mind to myself as far as these injections and mandates go. So that's a challenge, and I don't bring it up as a personal sob story so much as a way of empathizing with so many of you who are in similar circumstances, separated from family and otherwise. So just a little bit of the humanity that all of us are going through with what's happening lately. So, Matt.
Yeah, my name's Matt, and I'm still a pilot, but not active anymore on leave of absence against my wishes with a major Canadian airline. And my wife is a flight attendant. She's also in the same situation, so we are effectively unemployed at this point in time, and we have a 15-month-old baby. So again, it's not a sob story. It's more of an indication of our commitment to being on the right side of history, to being on the side of good, and to doing what needs to be done to hand down society to the next generation in a way that we feel duty bound to do. So this is the magnitude of the fight. So yeah, that's us.
Yeah, no, it's. I think you bring up a good point there, Matt. Just something you said brought to mind the whole idea of. I like drawing analogies. So often when my kids were growing up, I'd use word pictures, ways of framing something and thinking about where we're at. The idea of a marathon comes to mind, and a lot of what we get communication wise here is there's so many good people that want things to turn around, but they see it as a sprint, and we're finding more and more that it really is a marathon. So, in that context, we just wanted to update all of you with where we've been over the past few weeks. It's been a great few weeks. I think both Matt and I would agree on that. A lot of hard work went into the videos that came out, and we saw some really good growth with Free to Fly in terms of our supporter base, as well as our donations. And we'll put the link in the text below this video, just so that everybody knows where the website is to have a look at some of that. So there's also a fair bit that's gone on from a legal standpoint, and I know, Matt, you're probably more keenly aware of some of that.
Yeah, it's interesting to see subtle signs that the legal landscape is starting to shift. Much of what we hear going on is behind the scenes and not necessarily even verifiable, but the anecdotal side of it, at least, suggests that people in decision-making capacities are starting to reach out to different groups, especially those with scientific backbone, scientific credibility, in order to begin doing their own due diligence on getting sort of the other side of the argument. So, though it might not be reported, you can be certain that that type of thing is going on, and it's now going on at a rate much quicker than what we've ever seen before.
What do
So,
you
yeah.
what do you think's behind that, Matt? Like it almost seems like there's a feeling with some of these. There's been a couple things that have happened with some unions over the past week, right? Like, and it seems almost as if there's a concern on their part from, I don't know if it's a liability standpoint in terms of what happens down the road. Are you seeing it the same way, or what are your?
Well, there is that. I mean, yeah, I do see liability as a big concern. Right now, we're in a culture of fear, really, and that can only be sustained at a high level for brief periods of time. So, I think there's a confluence of a couple of things happening. You're seeing a little bit more of of clarity in terms of decision makers. They're not maybe coming at it from such a fearful approach, but at the same time, the fear now does shift to liability. So, at the end of the day, these people are sort of making a bed, and they're going to have to sleep in it eventually. And so I think there's a keen sense that this has to be done in a way that isn't going to come back and cause problems, not just for themselves personally, but for their corporations or for the government, just for society in general. So I think these are forces that are natural. They tend to work, they tend to be more obvious when you look at sort of an overall landscape as opposed to a microcosm or, focusing in on a particular issue. But we can focus in on a few of these issues. We've seen this decision that came, I believe it was in the Power Workers Union versus the Electrical Safety Authority, which was a arbitrated decision that just came out, I believe it was last week. Yeah. Which effectively struck down a vaccine mandate that was happening at the Electrical Safety Authority. And I can bring it up. In fact, I think it's worth going over because there were a few interesting points that came out of that. In particular, there was nothing in the collective agreement between the Electrical Safety Authority and the Power Workers Union, which specifically addressed vaccinations. So this is something that will be applicable for many unionized employees that are working under a collective agreement. Also, and this is important for the aviation world, there were no government mandates at the time that required ESA employees to be vaccinated. So this brings us to a sort of another issue, which is that there is a government mandate for the aviation industry. And Greg, you might sort of have some ideas as to where that fits in on the overall priority.
Well, I think the key is, you bring up the one that you brought up, and then there was another one with CUPE, which of course is of keen interest for those in the aviation industry because they represent a large number of our flight attendants. And it was important, and we don't want to minimize it. What it moved to was the union in question actually doing what they should have done from the get-go, which was represent their members through the grievance process. So it's hopeful, and our aviation professionals are moving down that road as well. But the issue with the interim order in particular is that it now does shift the landscape in the sense that there is legislation there, and it does now invoke the charter. Frequently what we've seen over the past 6 months is everyone mentioning the charter, essentially wielding it as a sword against these companies, but that's not what it's meant for. It's really meant as a shield against government. So that's really where it shifts the landscape from that standpoint. But that's a long process, right? In terms of actually mounting a charter challenge, and it's something that I'm sure a number of law firms are, those that we know and others that we're not aware of are probably starting to look into very closely now, right?
Yeah, and what's interesting about the sort of the way that this government mandate has come to us, it's come to us by way of an interim order. And so it's not law per se, it's an edict. And because it falls under, sort of a gray area of our legal system, no one really debates whether or not the government has the ability to put in these edicts or these orders during times of emergency, times of war, times where direct intervention is required to solve a problem. What's challenging about this particular interim order is that it's not really coming to us in the presence of an urgent situation. I mean, no one doubts that COVID is urgent, but it's not, you need to make a decision by, the end of the week, otherwise millions of people are going to die type urgent. So it's fallen into a bit of a gray area of law in that it's not really an emergency by the strictest definition of emergency. The strict definition of emergency is like, there was an earthquake that just happened. There's 350,000 people who are missing, and we need to mobilize, all resources to save as much humanity as we can. That's the strict definition of an emergency. So this isn't exactly that. Now, the implications for this is that this order needs to be renewed every 2 weeks, which means it's a moving target. And in a theoretical situation where you were able to take it to court and begin proceedings to challenge the constitutionality of it, in theory, the government could respond to that type of a challenge by simply not renewing the interim order, and it
Well, I think it
disappears from the
also, well, it also, brings up the whole importance of that broader public opinion, right? If it's something
exactly.
that's not cast in stone,
Yeah.
it's renewed on an every 2 week basis, and we've seen even in conversations with Transport Canada trying to get some clarity on the pieces that are in there. It's a continuously moving document, right? It's a living document. If you go to try and reference a certain paragraph, you come back 9 days later, and even the paragraphs are all renumbered, right? So it is something that's continually changing, which emphasizes again the importance of seeing this as a marathon, right? All of these steps are important one by one. So,
And it also means that the average Joe out in public actually has more of an effect on the outcome of this interim order than they would under, say, a legislative piece of text, or some kind of legal legislation
right,
that's gone through the correct legislative process.
yeah,
This is not cast in stone. This is very much at the whim of the zeitgeist of society at the time.
right,
So
yeah,
this is where it gets important for all hands on deck. Everybody needs to be doing their part. We've heard, Greg, and you were in on this conversation, but I found it actually quite meaningful that we've heard that politicians do not care about petitions. We've heard that they don't care about letters. It's phone calls, and it's essentially making yourself a human to these decision makers. You either need to be on their phone, or getting face to face with them in a way that's obviously appropriate and lawful, but making yourself heard with your actual voice, by any means that again is lawful. So people need to get
yeah.
involved.
No, that's a great segue, really, to what we wanted to bring up here as well, as far as where we're going next. And that's in the very near term. And one of the pieces that we did want to bring up is this weekend. And part of the challenge in this country, I find, is getting the information out and getting it in one place. It's something that we talk about fairly regularly across the freedom movement, as we call it in Canada. So one of the big things that's coming up is the Worldwide Freedom Rally this Saturday, and it is one of the most well attended globally. Finding the information sometimes is a little bit of a challenge, so we wanted to equip everybody with the means to do that. So we'll put there should be a link either in the email that you will have received with this, or on our website. We'll have a page up there as well, and perhaps in the notes below this video. So the easiest place to find it, or perhaps the most accurate and up to date, is to go on Telegram. There's a very, very large chat group in there, and then you just search in the top bar and you can put in your city. So I know there's a rally in Toronto, Victoria, Vancouver. I won't name them all, but most of the major cities, and it's a great way. It's, we always say, it's more important the people that see these rallies on some levels than the people that are there. It's incredibly encouraging to be there, but important is for the people that are passing by, just thinking, what's going on with these 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 people? It starts to shift the public mentality. And to your point, Matt, again, it's back to that marathon idea. And it may sound trivial for you as an individual in Ottawa to call your local councillor, to call your local mayor, but it matters. If we've got 10, 50,000 people picking up the phone and calling these councillors, calling business leaders and saying, hey, this medically segregated society is not okay with me. We've seen some of these chinks in the armor start to show up over the past few weeks, and we've really got to start exploiting them as much as we can. So another means with this rally that's coming up, to get the message out as far as what we're doing with Free to Fly and the freedom of mobility and otherwise, is some tools that we've got. Matt's done a great job putting together some flyers. I think there's flyers, and what else did you have, Matt? I think some business cards maybe.
Yeah, there'll
as
be
well.
business cards going out, and really what we're trying to do is just reach as many people as we can. It cannot be overstated how important it is that our group grows into normal society, that it reaches every walk of life. It's not just a numbers game, although that is important. We are trying to use our numbers to make an economic argument, both to the corporations that are making these policies, but also to the government. But there's sort of an intangible benefit to having a large group as well, and that's resources, human resources. We're looking to collaborate with people who have any type of skill for propagating a message, and the more people we reach, the more effective we become at reaching people, because we get some of these collaborations going as a result. So
Yeah, well, and that brings up too that idea of the marathon, right? I mean, and this is the nature of a marathon. You're in it with thousands of other people, and Free to Fly is one of a lot of important groups in Canada, and Matt and I have a great opportunity to talk to some phenomenal people doing incredible work. We were on a call last night that's really encouraging in terms of some of what's going on across the nation. So be encouraged that there are things going on behind the scenes as well. And the nature of a marathon is, there's times where you're grinding up a steep hill. There's times where the wind's at your face. Sometimes it's at your back. Sometimes it's raining. Sometimes it's sunshine. And I know this sounds a little bit hokey, but we're also talking with people who are encouraged and doing great work, and we're also talking to people who are really struggling right now, whether it's through unemployment, having to sell their homes, move, etc. And it's important to be part of that broader group, just in supporting each other, but also realizing that we're one of a lot of groups across the nation who we're also in touch with that are doing this important work. So take the time to click on the links that we've provided. We'd love to see you at one of these worldwide freedom rallies, and use the resources. These PDFs are all printable. And if you can get some of them out, just to give people some more resources to understand what we're doing. So I think that was the bulk of what we wanted to share, right?
yeah, you made an interesting comment though, Greg, and it got me thinking about people who are struggling right now, because I think we've all kind of had periods where it was hard to imagine things ever getting better. And those can be some dark days, as you well know, Greg, and I certainly do myself. Pilots specifically, we can really only speak about pilots here, but these are people who are typically geared towards becoming pilots ever since they're 10, 11, 12 years old. These careers are usually the result of childhood
13
dreams.
for me, and I think 5 for you or something, right?
Yeah, it
So
was pretty early on for me, but we're all like that by and large, and so it's been very difficult to confront potentially the end of my career at 39 years old, right at the peak of
young fella.
where I'm at. Yeah, and so where I'm going with this though is that personally speaking, I've gotten a lot out of being involved in a group. I've gotten a lot out of helping others. And in a funny way, if you need help yourself, helping others is actually one of the best ways to get that help. It often comes indirectly, but just making yourself useful, making yourself available, listening to other people, engaging in some kind of a project, something that furthers goals or is consistent with your values. Those are all things that everyday people can do, and they do add up. The totality of people doing these things does make a difference in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, awesome, great point, Matt. Yeah, so be encouraged, but also look for opportunities to encourage other people and to get involved. And we give a few examples of ways to do that, and we're always open to hear new ideas as well. So appreciate all of you, appreciate your support, and we'll talk to you again very soon, I'm sure.
Thanks, everybody.
See ya.